Hi and welcome to my Python YouTube channel. It's awesome to have you here. If you like this video, a thumbs up would be great. And make sure to subscribe for future videos. I also have a blog at prosperacoder.com with lots of cool stuff, so feel free to check it out. In the previous part, we started adding some code to the Python and Kivy files. In this part, we'll focus on two files, settings.py and settings.kv. Our goal here is to build a GUI for the settings screen, which will be the screen that you will see after the app is launched. Here you can choose the number of players, set the players' names and initial money amounts, as well as decide on an ending condition. Well, this is what the settings screen is going to look like in the final version of the app. Number of players, the names of the players, their initial money, and the ending condition. We won't achieve this stage in this part, but we'll get started. As you know, the settings screen is divided into several areas. We're gonna discuss and build each area one by one, but first let's recap on what we have. First, the Python file. It returns a box layout, and in the Kivy file we define the main areas and the labels and the button over here, which will be used in this file. And here's what this code creates for us. We can now run it from here because this is a separate app for now. So this is our settings screen, a bit different than you saw before, but you can see the main areas here: settings, the players, ending conditions, and the ready button. If you look closer at the Kivy file, you will see that there is one top-level widget. In our case, is the box layout. The indentation suggests that everything that is below it belongs to it. And this is how we make GUIs in Kivy. There's always a root widget. But you don't want a regular box layout to be the root widget. Let's create our own specific root widget that behaves like a box layout but is unique for this screen. This can be easily done by means of inheritance. So here inside the Python file, we create a class that inherits from box layout. And this is the layout for the whole settings screen. And of course, we must now return the settings screen over here, not box layout. Fine. And now the Kivy file. Here, we also have to use settings screen instead of box layout. Well, actually, it is sort of box layout because it inherits from box layout. And now, this is going to be the root widget of our screen. And we don't change anything here. So if we now save the file and run the app, we should see the same as before. So there's hardly any difference, but now we use settings screen, which is a subclass of box layout, as our root widget. In a similar way, we'll be creating the root widgets in the other Kivy files, but not now. Now we're gonna add the widgets that we need to all the four parts of the screen. There's nothing to change in the first part though. The settings label is just what it is, a label. So let's move on to the second area, the players. So what do we actually want in the players area? Well, this area will consist of three sub-areas. Title, just a label telling us that we are inside the players area. Radio buttons, they will let us choose the number of players. Player name and initial money setup. Here we will be able to give names to the players and set their initial money. These three sub-areas will be placed one below another, so a vertically oriented box layout seems a good choice as the container. Using labels as placeholders, we could represent the structure of the players area like so. Now if you run the app now, let's save it first, you should see the first area, settings, nothing changed here. But we can see that now the players area is divided into three sub-areas: the players, the radio buttons, and player name and initial money setup. Again, the title is just a label, but let's have a look at the radio buttons now. In Kivy, radio buttons are implemented as checkboxes. The difference is that with regular checkboxes, you can check any number of them simultaneously or uncheck all of them. Radio buttons work in a different way. At any given time, only one radio button in a group may be checked, and there always must be one checked. Besides, there is a graphical difference. Checkboxes are usually squares and radio buttons are circles. You already saw how to create a checkbox when we were discussing some of the basic widgets like labels, buttons, and some others. If you want to turn a checkbox into a radio button, all you have to do is set the group property to a name. All checkboxes with the same name of the group will be turned into radio buttons. Now, there will be 4 radio buttons because we need 4 possible options: 1 player, 2 players, 3 players, or 4 players. We'll put them in a horizontal box layout, but we also need a label for each radio button, so instead of using just the checkboxes, we'll put each checkbox along with its accompanying label in a horizontal box layout. To turn the checkboxes into radio buttons, we'll set their group property to players. So as things are slowly becoming more and more complex, let's jump into the Kivy code. So, we need a box layout for all radio buttons. It's gonna be a horizontal box layout. So we don't have to specify the orientation because horizontal is the default value. But this must be indented now because this is inside this box layout. Now inside this box layouts, we'll have 4 horizontal box layouts, each of them containing a checkbox and a label. So we don't need this. Let's add a box layout. Again, it's a horizontal box layout, so we don't need this. And inside the box layout, we need a checkbox. With the group property set to players, and we need a label with the text 1 player. So this is for the first radio button, which is going to be used when we want the game to be in 1 player mode. Now let's copy this and let's paste it 3 more times. Fine. Now the second radio button should be in the same group, so the group is still players, but we need the text on the label to be 2 players now. Here the group is the same, players, but the text should be 3 players. And naturally here the group is the same, but here we need 4 players. Good. Now let's save it. And if you run the code now, you will see this. Now here you can see the 4 radio buttons. Actually, you can hardly see them because they are not very visible, and none of them is checked. Now if you click on any of them, here it is, you will check it. But if you click it again, you will uncheck it. Well, this is not the behavior we expect from radio buttons. Normally, if one of the radio buttons is checked, we can't uncheck it. So there must be at least 1 radio button checked, except at the very beginning. But here, as you can see, you can just check it and uncheck it. We will be talking about how to change this a bit later. So, as I just mentioned, we're not done with the radio buttons yet, but let's leave them now as is and move on to the next sub area. the player name and initial money setup. Now this sub-area is pretty complex. There's a row for each player that contains a label with the generic player name, a text input for the new player name, a horizontal box layout that contains a label with a dollar symbol, and a text input for the player's initial money amount. Besides, there's going to be a header row at the top so that you know what the other widgets are all about. The structure above resembles the structure in code, so let's write the code now. So we are still in the players area and we're interested in this part over here. Now we can get rid of this placeholder for now and we'll put everything in a vertical box layout. So box layout, orientation, vertical. Good. Now let's start with the headers row. It's gonna contain some labels. So the headers row, an empty label just to add some space, then the name header with the text name, and the money header with the text initial money. So this is the headers row, and now we have the players rows. So it's pretty complex. So let me just show you the code line by line. Here's the player one section. So here we have a label with a generic player name, which is player one. Next we have a text input where we can enter a new name for player one if we don't like this generic name. This is a single line text input, so we have to set multi-line to false. Then we have a horizontal box layout for the money part, which contains an empty label to add some space, a label with a dollar sign, and a text input for the initial money with multi-line set to false again, because we don't want this to be a multi-line text input. Now the code for the other players is without comments to make it more concise, but it's very intuitive. So player 2, and we have the same code for player 3 and for player 4. As you can see, this code is very repetitive. We're going to see about that when we discuss properties. Let it be so for now. And now let's run the app. Let's save it here and let's run it from the Python file. And as you can see, you can now see the players, the text inputs, and the initial money part, but it doesn't look very good because we didn't take care of positioning and sizing yet. But all the elements that we needed are present. We'll position and scale all the widgets when you are done creating them. So now let's move on to the next area, the ending conditions area. Now you know that Slugrace is a racing game, but when does it end? Well, this will be left for you to decide. You will be given 3 options to choose from. 1. The game is over when there is only one player with any money left. 2. The game is over not later than after a given number of races. And 3. The game is over not later than the total racing time has elapsed. So in the settings screen, you should be able to choose one of these options. The first option will be the default one. If you should be allowed to choose only one option out of many, radio buttons seem to be a reasonable solution. So let's use them. Additionally, for the second and third option, there should be a text input where you can enter the number of races or the time respectively. The radio buttons will be placed in a grid layout, and the grid layout along with the title label will be placed in a vertical box layout. So let's have a look at the Kivy code. We are now in the ending conditions area. We don't need this placeholder label anymore. Let's remove it and let's paste the code that we will need. So here, everything will be in a box layout, a vertical box layout. First, there is the title label, which says ending conditions, just a label. Then we have 3 radio buttons, and the radio buttons are in grid layout. So we have a grid layout with 3 rows, and inside this grid layout we have 3 checkboxes. These 3 checkboxes use the same group conditions here and here and here, which makes them radio buttons. So here's the checkbox with a group set to conditions, and each radio button will be accompanied by label. So here's the label. The game is over when there is only one player with any money left. This is the first ending condition. Then we have option 2, races. Here's the checkbox in the same group conditions, and here the label and text input will be placed in a horizontal box layout. So here's the box layout with a label and text input. The label says the game is over not later than after a given number of races, and here is the text input where you will be able to enter the number of races. Finally, option 3, here we have a checkbox again, also in the conditions group, and then a box layout with a label and text input, just like here. Here the label says the game is over not later than the total racing time has elapsed. So again, you can enter the number of minutes of the game in the text input, which we are going to handle later. Now let's save this file, and now we can run it. Good. You should see this now. So here we have the ending conditions. Ugly? Well, definitely not very pretty, but it's slowly taking shape. The radio buttons are not very well visible, but they will be when we take curves, styles and colors. Besides, the text inputs hide parts of the labels, which also must be taken care of later. And now there is only one more area left, the ready button area. This area is really very simple. The only widget it contains is a button. The code we need for this area is already there, the ready button. So there's nothing to change for now. Finally, with all the widgets we need in place, let's size and position them inside the layout so that it all looks better. So let's talk about sizing and positioning the widgets in the settings screen. If you don't specify the size of a widget in an area or the size of the area itself, each area, so each widget or layout, will occupy the same amount of space. Here you can see that the 4 main areas each occupies 1/4 of the available space. 1/4 for the first area, settings label, 1/4 for the players area, 1/4 for the ending conditions area, and 1/4 for the button. But we don't need so much space for the settings label or the ready button. On the other hand, we need more space for the 2 areas in the middle. To sort this out, let's size the widgets that we want to be of a specific size. You may want to recap on the sizing techniques that we covered in one of the previous parts. Here's the whole Kivy file modified with all the size and positions, which are now set to specific values. Let's have a look at this code. So first here, the settings label. Here we want the label to occupy the whole width of its container. So the first element in the size hint tuple must be set to 1, and we want the height to be a fixed number of pixels. So the second element in the size hint must be set to none, because we're inside a layout. The height of 30 pixels seems just fine. Good. Then we have the title label. Let's make the font size a bit bigger, and this label should also occupy the whole width, but its height should be 30 pixels, just like before. Fine, then we have the radio buttons. The whole radio button sub-area should occupy 40% of the width and should be 50 pixels high. So 40%, 50 pixels high. Now, player 1. Here the checkbox should occupy half the width of the containing box layout and its whole height. And the same here, here and here for each of the players. And now we have the player name and initial money setup area. Well, let's start with the headers row. Here we have the first label. Its width should be 80 pixels. And then we have this label with the text name. Here, the width of this label should be 700 pixels. Then we have the player's rows. Here we have the first label, and here the size of this label should be 80 by 30 pixels. So we have to set size hint to none, and the width and height to 80 and 30 respectively. We could also, instead of this, we could use the size property and set it to a tuple containing 80 and 30. Then we have the text input. Here the size is 400 by 30. So again, we're using the width and height individually, but we could use size instead. Then we have another label, and its width should be 280 pixels, and the label with the dollar sign, which should be 20 by 30 pixels, and the text input, which should be 250 by 30 pixels. These dimensions are the same for player 2 and player 3 and player 4. Again, this code is very repetitive, but don't worry about it for now. We're going to change it soon. Then we have the ending conditions. This area should occupy 40% of the available height. And here we have the label. We will make the font size slightly bigger, like 20 pixels. And size hint is set to none, which means we want to set this second value manually. So we set height to 30 pixels. Then we have the radio buttons. Here, the width should be 5% of the available width for each checkbox. So here and here. And here for the second checkbox and the third checkbox, we have the text inputs for the number of races or time respectively, which we want to set to 250 by 30 pixels, and the same here. Finally, the ready button should be 200 pixels by 40, and we want to center it horizontally, so center X is set to 0.5. Now let's run the app. As you can see, some of the widgets like the initial money label and text inputs have been cut off, but don't worry, the app window will eventually be bigger, so everything will fit in. For now, you can try resizing the window to see the missing parts. Now it looks better, but still I don't quite like it yet. For example, the labels would look better if they were left aligned. So how do we align label text? You can align both horizontally and vertically in Kivy. You should use the H-align and V-align properties respectively. Let's align all the labels in the Kivy file horizontally and vertically, to the left in the former case and to the center in the latter. There is one more thing you must be aware of. If you just set the H-align and V-align properties, you won't see the effect. This is because the label text does not occupy the whole label. To work around it, you should set the text size property to the size of the label. As this property is defined inside the label, you can refer to the label using the self variable. So if you want to align the label to the left horizontally and to the center vertically, the whole code should look like this. Text size, self refers to this label. H-align left, V-align center. And now let's align all the labels in the Kivy file. So here it is, the settings label. Here's the alignment to the left horizontally and to the center vertically. Fine, here's the next label. Aligned. And here. And here. And here. Then we have this label over here. And this label over here. and this one. And some more. Here. 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 And the same for the other players. Here. And now here in the ending conditions, here we have a label. Here. Here. Let's save. And now, if you run the program, you'll see the labels aligned. You can also resize the window to see the missing parts of the widgets. Now the labels are aligned, but the widgets are packed very tightly, with very little space around them. This doesn't look good. So our last thing to do for now is to add some padding and spacing. You can add some padding and spacing to the settings screen. What's the difference? Well, padding determines the distance between the layout box and the children. You can use it with 1, 2, or 4 arguments. If there is one argument, the padding is the same on each side. If there are 2 arguments, the first one is for horizontal padding and the second for vertical padding. There may be also 4 arguments, then they determine the padding in the following order: left, top, right, bottom. On the other hand, spacing determines the distances between children. It takes just one argument. The default value is 0. So here's the modified code with the padding and spacing added. So here, let's add 10 pixels of spacing and 10 pixels of padding on each side of the layout box. Then, in the players area, let's add 10 pixels of spacing and 10 pixels of padding on each side of the layout box too. Then we have the radio buttons and nothing happens here. Then we have the ending conditions. Let's add 10 pixels of spacing and 10 pixels of padding on each side of the layout box too. And here are the radio buttons. Let's add 10 pixels of spacing between widgets. And that's it. Let's save if not saved, and let's run the app. Now it looks better. Let's resize the window. And you can see that now there are some spaces between the widgets, and between the widgets and the layout window. Well, I'm going to leave off now. Here you can compare again what we have with what we're aiming at. This is the final version. They are slightly different, I would say, but don't worry. We're going to work on this. So there's still a lot of work to do, but I want to take a break now as far as building the other screens is concerned and refactor the code that we developed in this part. As you can see, the code is very repetitive and this should be avoided. So in the next part, we'll extract quite a lot of the code that is shared by more than one widget into class rules. This will make the code much more concise. Okay, that's it for this video. If you like it, a thumbs up would be great. Also, make sure to subscribe for future videos. If you want to leave a comment or ask a question, you're welcome to do so. Thanks for watching.